Hello and welcome to WGEI Talk. We're going to talk to Jørgen Klev, who has just given us a excellent presentation on different taxation systems in the extractive sector. I wanted to just touch on a few maybe additional topics or dig a little deeper into some of the points you raised during your presentation. So I thought the first thing I wanted to ask about a bit, I think you presented very well what super profit or economic rent or resource rent or the many names for it is. But I was wondering if you could just start by giving some of the rationale for why government should take this rent.
Yeah, just in general, the government already taxes the part of the normal rent, which is created from more or less every company. Every company has to pay corporate income tax from based on their profits. So there is already some rent collection in normal industries. And when then there are special industries which takes resources belonging to the state, in terms, it can be hydropower, it can be mining, it can be then petroleum, it can be fishing, it can be essentially resources belonging to the state. If there are incidents or industries where they are creating additional profits based on the extraction from state's resources, and it's fair that the government takes an additional amount of the profits generated. And that is also why you will see these high tax rates in certain industries where they are then using or selling the resources coming from the state.
You talked a bit about what you called the golden rule for taxation and sort of that a government should allow a company to get a decent or normal rate of return before they start extracting a resource rent or a tax on resource rent. And I think one of the issues I think you mentioned there is that there is, or perhaps to tie it to something you mentioned also, is this issue of information asymmetry. So how can governments, or can governments at all, observe what a normal profit is for companies when trying to determine what an appropriate tax rate is?
A normal rate of return, it's very hard to define. It's not. It will be hard to define in more or less every sector, the petroleum sector, telecom sector. So I guess a normal rate of return, you can take the other point or the other angle. What is the required rate of return for a company? And of course, depending on country risk and alternative projects, the typical return requirement for a petroleum company is from 10 to 20% rate of return. And if the project is good, then of course the rate of return can be much higher. But of course there's these huge risks within the extractive industries, that the prices are volatile, the upfront commitments are large. So whether you should punish the companies that are actually, or not punish, but it's very easy to then go to say after a period of time with very beneficial terms that you have, this project has been too good, because maybe when the investment decision was done, then the world looked very different.
Yeah, that wasn't observable at the time.
Yeah, so it's this ex ante decisions which you also need to take into account.
And those ex ante decisions, can they also have a cost in a way? If you,
what do you think?
Like if you make if the government makes sorry, I meant not ex ante, but if government makes decisions after they've realized that they didn't get enough out of this, that was what I was thinking of. Can that have a cost to their future prospects for attracting
Of course, in general, a tax system should be as stable as possible. But a tax system in a country should, if possible, there is some room to maneuver in. If prices are changing, and you see that, or in order to trigger investments, there are examples in the UK where recently where there has been a tax change due to lower oil price, and also there has been in Norway introduction of or exploration incentives in order to. So you always have to look at how the industry evolves in the country and sort of which phase you are at. Are you in a early stage where there are a lot of prospects, or are you in the end of a phase where we're sort of trying to extract the last resources? Then you should design the tax system according to which stage you are at. And of course there are country risks where the political environment can be more stable or unstable, which also should be taken into account when assessing tax rates.
Why do some countries choose a concessionary and some contractual models? If you can, I don't know.
In general, the concessionary systems they depend on a larger system to function. And but while in a contractual system, you have it's a more individual basis, and the contractor may want to secure itself regarding. So it creates a law within a law, sort of. There may be a broader petroleum tax law, which is there, but the government or the contractor want to try to protect itself, because usually maybe the environment is unstable, and they want to reduce the risk.
Yes, I think maybe if there's some questions from the audience, we can take that as well. You have to give them the microphone, Fabian.
Yeah, thank you very much. With regards to the required rate of return, what I do know is at the beginning of the year, the operators, that's the IOCs, come up with their internal rate of return. And so when they file their returns and then that rate has been reached, that is the profit has reached that internal rate of return, it triggers the additional tax, that's the resource rent that the government will have to take. The issue is, how do you monitor the capital expenditure and the operational expenditure to be able to reach the required amount that's supposed to be deducted so that you can tax the abnormal rent? The monitoring of the capital expenditure and then the operational expenditure. How do you monitor it?
I guess it's maybe not one answer to this question, but at least it requires tax authority or an auditors who follows up the companies, and that the costs of the company are audited and also maybe published officially, and such that the transparency is there. And it's also then to have a good collaboration between the ministries and maybe the operating companies. And the example from Norway, where there are two persons dedicated to more or less each petroleum company, and follow up whether the costs are capex or opex, or whether the terms have been on a arm or a market based. It requires a huge system to, if you want to be certain that all the costs are correct. And how a country establish that type of structure may vary.
Thank you, Jørgen. I think that's it for our brief interview. I think we'll, if there's any further questions for Jørgen, you can also probably talk to him over a cup of coffee out there. I think we've learned a lot today about how complex this sector is, and I think like the number of trade-offs you had between different systems and different different ways of organizing your tax system was enormous, and it's a very difficult policy area for government, it seems. So I think that also means, as auditors, it's also difficult for us to find out how we are going to respond to it. But thank you very much, Jørgen.